Welcome to the Bitchy Quill, where we bitch about stuff and then we come up with some solutions and action items for you to do, mostly in the publishing industry, though we do tend to stray once in a while. So I'm author H.L. Brooks.
I'm Heather Cardyn Brooks.
And happy Black History Month! Yay!
And don't let anybody tell you any differently.
That's right. We're going to celebrate Black History Month, whether that's the popular thing to do right now or not.
Which it is.
It is. It's the popular thing to do. We only do the popular things to do.
Popular. Okay.
We're going to be popular. Hi. We have not seen each other since the election. Or not the election, the inauguration.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yes, we have not seen each other since the inauguration.
That was Freudian.
Yes. Yes, it does feel a little... I am...
Because I didn't watch TV that day.
I didn't watch...
Or the next day. I didn't watch TV for 2 days.
I avoided news. It was a little hard to I know a lot of other of my friends were avoiding news too, so I felt a little safe to be here and there on socials, but mostly I tried to just clean and organize my house and do things that kept my mind occupied. But one of the things we're going to talk about today is Oklahoma Bill 593, SB 593, introduced by Senator Dusty Deevers. And if you watched or listened to our very first podcast of the Bitchy Quill back on October 16th, it was posted.
Yeah, that episode.
The episode is titled, "This May Be the Last Time You Can Vote." And, of course, there's always this, you're being hysterical, it's hyperbole and things like that. But here we are. And what we talked about was Project 2025 and how it might affect romance authors, because we're trying to be very focused on books and writing in the publishing industry, particularly as it relates to women, marginalized people, LGBTQIA, etc. So we talked about Project 2025, and I felt like we made some pretty good points and pointed out some things that were very concerning in the language in Project 2025. And of course, this whole time there have been a lot of people saying, oh, Trump said he didn't know what Project 2025 is. Oh, Trump, he has already disavowed that and disowned it. And meanwhile, now that he's been inaugurated in the past 2 weeks, he has rammed through a huge swath of Project 2025 things that were laid out clearly. It was a plan. It was a very clearly laid plan. And of course, he's got a lot of people who helped implement or create that document that are now, working for him. So in that episode, we laid out what basically is now laid out in Oklahoma Bill Senate Bill 593. At first, as I was telling Cardyn, I was going to go over it with you and explain it to you. But I feel like the people who are watching this podcast are probably already interested in where to be pointed in the right direction and will do their own research. Whereas anybody who is, let's say, a supporter of that person, that leader, is not going to listen to us anyway. You didn't listen to us before, and I don't think you're going to listen to us now. But, I don't want to be alarmist, and I definitely don't want to make things worse. So I'm going to say this is just a bill that's being proposed. It's
right. Maybe put the link, because there's the PDF. Maybe put the link in the description.
I will absolutely put that in the...
so people can read it for them. Again, unlike tyrants and dictators, we're encouraging people to think for themselves, to read, digest, consider for themselves.
We're not telling you not to read things. Some people are telling you not to read things.
Which is a flag.
That's a red flag when they tell you not to read things. We want you to read things. Yeah. Please read things.
It's about 10 or 11 pages, the bill.
Yeah, it's not super long. Yeah. But I think you made a very important note when we were discussing. We before we do this podcast, we always have like a little charcuterie board and a tea and a little chat session to figure out exactly how the chat's going to go. And you brought up a very good point. And I do think that it's going to be confusing for people intentionally about language in the bill, especially at the top of the bill.
Yes. And also, so there's some phrases that jumped out at me, like any reasonable person. So who decides the details of the definition of reasonable? And we talked about...
In terms of pornography.
Yes.
Any reasonable person would consider this pornography. But even before that, at the very top of the bill, what they say this bill is about.
Oh, right. So, again, it starts out with what seems like a reasonable supposition, which is protecting children from pornography. Well, of course.
Or being in pornography.
So, of course, reasonable, ethical, moral people want to protect children.
Right.
And really anyone from from being exploited, right? But they use the language of protecting children from pornography. Well, of course. Everybody wants to protect children. Every reasonable, ethical, moral person wants to protect children from pornography. Then when you start reading... the way the language leaves a lot of room for interpretation, which, to our first podcast episode, opens the door to, if some people want to pursuing legal action against authors who write
spicy. It doesn't even have to be spicy.
Right.
If you have two gay characters and they kiss at the park.
Yes.
If they want to, and we're telling you this just like we told you before, if they want to consider that pornography based on who they are considering reasonable, there is room open for interpretation. Now, when you start reading that bill, it looks like it's all about child exploitation,
right,
and child sexual abuse.
Yes.
But as you read further on in the bill, it doesn't specify children. It just says any of this kind of activity. And that includes things like, I'm sorry, but I couldn't help it, like fellatio and cunnilingus are in there.
I know,
and I was like, all of those bros who are so deep into the lesbian porn, the lipstick lesbian on girl action, who are spending all their time on Pornhub looking up scissoring, they're going to be very, very upset if they don't, because they don't take the thought a step further to think, oh, this is going to impact something I like. They only want to take away things that other people like, that they think are immoral.
Yes.
So I definitely think, I will put the link in the thing. I definitely think everybody should go take a little read of it. I don't want to be alarmist because it hasn't passed, but this is Oklahoma we're talking about. I believe they just recently passed
Is that the one with the 10 Commandments?
I think it's prayer or something. Anyway, that's not our wheelhouse right now. Education's our wheelhouse. If you want to look up somebody who's on top of education, go to Miss Frazzled's page.
Oh, yeah.
She's great. So go look Miss Frazzled up. She has all over the educational stuff. But Oklahoma is like a testing ground for this kind of stuff. If this passes, then you can expect to see it in the rest of the country. But even worse, if it passes in Oklahoma, do you know what that means? Don't sell your romance books in Oklahoma, because you could get in really big trouble. Like, you need to read through the bill and look at the charges, the fines, the criminality. We're talking felonies and stuff like that.
One of them is like 5 years. One, it could be up to 20 years. Just read for yourself, discuss, decide, consider.
Right. So that's probably the main point that I wanted to make. And like I said, I was going to go over these things, but I feel like it's better to start directing people to go over things for themselves, because what happens is you're getting my filter, the way that I read it, the way that I interpret it. I am not a legal expert, but I do know what I saw in that bill, and it was not all about protecting children at all.
Which, again, to be clear, protecting children from being exploited in any way, especially sexually, is, of course, a top priority for any society that calls itself a moral, ethical society. I just want to be clear.
Most child exploitation, sexual exploitation, is already criminal. They want to add things like drag queen story time.
Mm-hmm.
So that is what this bill is about. It's about, these kinds of things. And it will, even though it doesn't lay out specifically romance books, read the bill. You will see how it connects to romance books. So I don't want to waste any more time on that. It may never pass. If it does, we're really in big trouble. And if it does pass, so pay attention. If it does pass, yank your books from distribution in Oklahoma. I don't know how that's going to work because that isn't how book distribution works.
Right.
You can't do it by state.
Right.
So if you're selling your books individually yourself, that's a much easier fix than, let's say, Amazon. I imagine what will happen is if that happens, Amazon will prevent KDP distribution of anything that's considered, within that
falls under that,
in that definition or whatever. So it'd be a very complicated implementation.
And they've tried this bill before, and it didn't pass. If I'm remembering.
A version. He's tried to pass a bill similar to this before. I didn't read that one, so I can't say what it was like. But this is a new time and a new era with a new administration, so we'll see. But anyway, this was all laid out in Project 2025. It is practically straight, some of it word for word from Project 2025. So,
which you can still find the PDF for Project 2025 online, because it's still worth being aware of. And as we said in the first episode, the Project 2025 PDF is like 900 plus pages, and that's overwhelming. So
we laid out in our episode which pages.
Yeah, and also you can online. Somebody had a searchable PDF. So if you have school-age children, if you want to read the thing about the part that has to do with education, if you are a retiree and you want to read the part that focuses on what might affect you as a retiree.
I'll put a link to that too.
Yeah, but it's worth it. Okay, let me start again. For a lot of us, it's an extremely stressful, overwhelming time. And it's just been 2 weeks. So we'll have to pace ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because part of the intention of the shock and awe and the constant bombardment is to make us feel overwhelmed, is to make us feel powerless, is to make us feel like, what's the point? And just a reminder, for those of us who are from marginalized groups, whether it's because of gender or sexuality or age or ability or whatever your otherness is, previous generations had to deal with the same, if not more, resistance, and they had fewer resources, and they had it was more difficult to mobilize and to connect with other people, like-minded people, similar people who want diversity, equity, inclusion, fairness, justice, safety, peace of mind, access to opportunities and resources. So feel what you feel, and then take a deep breath. And what's one thing that you can do?
Right. Yeah, and we will do a little list at the end of the podcast of action items. Try to not make it overwhelming. We'll just, at the end of every podcast, we'll have a few things that are ideas that you can do to help you feel like you're helping or in control or have a little bit of control or being useful or productive. Because that's important to me. Like, I can't watch somebody complain about things and then have absolutely no guidance for solution. And it's like anybody can do that. Anybody can stand up and complain about it. So the best way, I think that one of the best things people can do, because there has been such a division in trustworthy journalism, I think one of the things that people can do is find an indie publishing source that is truthful and reliable and support them. I did a little bit of vetting. I am subscribing now to the Baltimore Banner. This is not an endorsement of the Baltimore Banner, but I did a little research. I found them to be very factual in their reporting. It wasn't a lot of editorializing or slanting the headlines.
The spin that is obvious. You're like, oh, I think I know how you mean.
Also am going to do one step further than I would normally do, and that I am going to look for similar independent news sources in red states, and I'm going to subscribe to them. If you're in a red state and you have a favorite indie news source that you feel is truthful and
sticking with the facts,
like Oklahoma, Mississippi, and stuff like that. We have the Washington Post, owned by a bajillionaire, and most of the town square discussion places are owned by bajillionaires who are bending the knee to Trump. So it's important. If you can afford, and there are some Substacks out there like Heather Cox Richardson, that just report she does a daily letter that she does, and it's hard, but yeah. So put a little bit of money into. That's what they need. I mean, unfortunately, there are free things you can do. You can go do sit-ins and things like that. And there are things that you can do. So that one of them is to subscribe to indie news sources. And you can run for office. Rua, who I will put her information in here, is a rep in Georgia. Who I heard on TikTok the other night was going to give 101 lessons on how to run for office. So that's another thing that you can do. You can run for office. And you had said,
learn more about your local politics, at your neighborhood community level, because that's how extremists make inroads, as they start small and they build from there. A little bit of a tangent is, the thing with the proliferation of book bans, when you dig deeper, you see that it is a small group of people usually that just game the system to get a book banned. It's not usually a majority of outrage about a particular book or content or whatnot. It's a small group of people where, of course, parents and guardians have the absolute right and responsibility to be aware and have control over what their minor charges, offspring, children are reading and have access to. But that's for their own children, not for everybody's children.
Right.
So put forth a little effort to find out what's going on. If you can attend the county council meeting, because that'll give you a real feel of what's going on in your community, who has an agenda that you might even agree with what they want to do, but maybe you don't. You don't want to be sandbagged by whatever it is.
And school board members can have a huge influence. When I was in Charles County, there was a particular one that wanted evolution removed from science classes, and then when that didn't work, wanted what is the other one called, the intelligent design instead, and stuff like that. So, and that person had a voice and a seat at the table. And I think that it's really important that you pay, and it's hard to pay attention. It is. Because
a lot of times it happens on weeknights. People are tired. Kids have extracurricular stuff. But it's that is by design of making it inconvenient.
Right.
So if you can be inconvenient on the front end, because it's going to be a lot more inconvenient on the back end if extremist people, either way, if extremist people
on either end of the spectrum,
yes,
get in those seats,
yes, and then it's hard to get them out.
So this is where the indie newspaper or the small local newspapers
Yes.
come in handy because they might do it. You know, I started a blog years ago called Charles County Cafe, and it was very well attended blog, and it was all politics, local politics and stuff. But I started it because I wanted to know the school board race was coming up. My kids were in school at the time. I wanted to know about the politicians that were running. It was impossible to find the information about them. I could not find. I was like, what does this person believe? What do they want to? So I started calling them because they're registered with the Board of Elections. So I literally just picked up the phone. I looked it up online, and I picked up the phone. I started calling each one of them and asking them what their beliefs was, and then I posted about it because I was like, how am I supposed to know who to vote for? Where is this information? And that is why your local news sources are super important. And if you don't see them reporting on something, be vocal about it. Be like, the school board elections are in a month. I haven't seen a single thing about the school board. Can you please tell me, who, and those smaller news sources will be more responsive than the bigger ones will be. So that local politics is so important. It's so important. So those are we don't want to overwhelm you. Right. Those are our 3 action items.
They are. And then let me add a little thing because it's the beginning of Black History Month, even though certain people are trying to outlaw it. I'm not a TikTok person, but on my Instagram feed there is I've been seeing these great videos of something called Hillman Talk, because evidently sometime in the past week or two there's a professor who kind of tongue-in-cheek posted something about Black History 101, and evidently she was so good that the feedback was, can you do this on the regular? And she was so moved and overwhelmed, and then other history professors said, "Oh, I'll teach 101 about this or 101." So now it's actually a channel, Hillman, after the different world fictional HBCU of Hillman University, and the topics. It does feel like.
Do you want to do a little mini-sode of this? We could do like a 15-minute mini-sode.
So let me look at some. Okay, but I just wanted to bring it up because it's the beginning of Black History Month, and we know that Black history and in actually accurate history lessons across the board are under attack. So the origin story for Hillman Talk was so encouraging, and then when you see the different professors and the topics, I just want people to have access. Because we're very fortunate, privileged in the area in which we are. Like, we are going to feel it, but we won't feel it in as extreme a way as other parts of the country will. Yeah. So I just wanted to put it out there that whatever's going on in your school system or your workplace or whatnot, there are people out there that are like, we're going to use these platforms and these resources. You will not silence us. Right. We'll get it out there. But it's Hillman Talk.
I love it. Yeah.